Hello, everybody. Azeroth Wars has come out with a new patch. It's a new year, and we're here to talk about it. Uh, version 1.13, a lot of things have changed. Yakri Bovine has taken lead and changed Kalimdor, removed Masteries, but vassals are still there.
Yep.
On to okay, right. Sorry, Yakri is not the person above me. That's Sabas. He's just a ghost in the wind, so there's no camera for him.
Yeah, Yakari is the voice.
Hello.
So,
So
what do you want to how what should we talk about first? What is the most exciting change in the new patch?
I don't know about most exciting, but the main thing you'll probably notice playing it is that there's a lot of stuff that was removed. Um, Namely solo paths, masteries, which have been in the game for I don't even know how long, multiple years, and sort of these pseudo path kind of things, which is sort of like masteries but aren't for various reasons. And in one particular case with the Fell Horde, also tiers. So all of these systems that were there are now gone. Um, and the reason for that is that they were kind of getting confusing, both from a player perspective and from more importantly, I guess, from a design perspective. Um, we had solo paths, which were these. I mean, they were really cool. They totally fulfilled their original purpose, which was just that when someone doesn't have an ally in the game, they should get a whole bunch of stuff that should make it possible for them to play alone. The only problem I ended up having with that was that it had a lot of cool stuff. Like most of the solo paths did cool stuff, and it felt weird to me that that cool stuff was gated behind what was essentially uh, a mechanism for when the game wasn't working quite as intended. So, for instance, Quel'Thalas could only get Spellbreakers if your ally left the game, and that felt weird to me when I wanted Spellbreakers to be a core part of the game. Other thing that got removed, Masteries. Again, they had a really cool intent, which was basically just to say that when you play the game, you have one of three different ways that you can drastically change your gameplay experience. In practice, had a bunch of issues. The first one that I don't think many of them, if any, really did drastically change your gameplay experience because that's ridiculously hard to do. Um, and also, in some ways, in the particular case of Azeroth, was a little pointless because we're talking about a game where you pick from one of 12 radically different faction experiences. So you're already making pretty extreme choices about your gameplay. There were pseudopaths, which I don't know. Like at the start of the game, Frostwolf could pick between one of these three different caster upgrades, and they were just weird in my book. And if you missed them at the start of the game because they were free, they were very punishing if you just didn't see the little building there. And Fellhorde tiers were sort of like Masteries, except they were gated behind an event. Oh, and the last like fancy reward mechanism the game has always had was just events, and we kept those. So,
in a better skin.
yeah, with a whole fancy UI to go around it that I
Yeah.
made at some point. So basically, 1.13 is about taking all of those different systems and consolidating them into quests and researches, just to have a more understandable, streamlined experience for players to enjoy, but also it is radically easier to design content for.
Yeah. One other big thing about it was that we've really been trying for the last few years to make Azeroth Wars really easy to get into or easier to get into from players that play vanilla. So we want them to come from the campaign or from playing melee and to just have an understanding of what they're getting into. They don't have to worry about masteries or things that don't exist. They worry about their upgrades in their buildings, so it's familiar. And that familiarity helps them get over the fact that Azeroth Wars is really difficult to get into and very complex.
I found the following thing. This is like, so the masteries. I found that um they were either, there was always like one best mastery, or maybe another one that you could do that was like good, but usually, like, let's say you wanted to do one of the weirder masteries, or like maybe there was a mastery that lets you catch up later. Well, if you want to win earlier, then you have to do the better mastery. So it was like, it was almost redundant. I don't know if that makes sense. I mean, I don't think that was the case across the board, but like Stormwind, for instance, like you'd
It
never
totally
do
does make sense.
the C mastery. You'd only do the C mastery if you didn't do your other masteries, and then you were just like, well, I'm fucked now, so we're gonna be a pirate.
That makes
Yeah.
a ton of sense.
That's the thing about permanent choices in games, is that you're sort of obligated in some psychological sense to pick the most generically useful one, because you don't want to be or feel punished for making other choices that are more specific.
Yeah. The good thing about having now only basic research and quests is that you're never locked out of anything. Any decision you take or you don't take, you can go back on it later, or you can get that content later, which is a more rewarding experience.
Yeah, I can
That said,
imagine. Oh, sorry, you go.
that said, we are open to the possibility of mutually exclusive choices within the game, because they are fun for their own reasons. We'd just prefer them to be substantially more drastic, I suppose, than what Masteries were. But that's something we're still thinking about.
A future prospect.
Yeah, I mean, they were like, they could be very minor or they could be very very powerful, but they were like, yeah, basic, as you say. There wasn't a lot of excitement. It was just like, upgrade your huntresses or upgrade your whatever the other ones were.
Yeah, but
Priests and
that's
stuff.
that's exactly what we wanted to get away from.
I see that. So I played a couple games. I played like maybe 8, and then other things, that's the new things, out with the old and with the new. There seem to be more quests. You guys redid Kalimdor, and new custom music for every, right at the top. Every faction now has custom music, noticeable immediately.
I'd say the final one that you missed is that now every faction has a unique visual identity. So all the building skins are unique, and they don't no faction share a building with another. So it's all a unique building set. That's the biggest features.
Yeah, the main thing
So
with the quests is most of those aren't totally new. They're attempts to take the content that was locked behind solo paths and masteries into. Some of those went into researches, and some of them went into quests.
Oh, okay, got you.
yeah,
It seemed like they were reworked though. There's, at least the factions I played, there's some.
Oh yeah, and there were substantial faction reworks to a limited number of factions. Probably Warsong and Dalaran got hit the most, I would say.
yeah, druids
Um,
and frostwolf a lot too.
Originally, that started as me getting kind of some of the factions, in terms of the tick trees and their buildings and their layout particularly, felt really really strange. There was something like Warsong at the bestiary. They had trained. It only had one unit, I think, that had anything to do with an animal. Things like that were kind of bothering me. I also really didn't like 5 units, for instance, or even 4 units really being trained from a single structure. So the initial thing there was just consolidate that down so that you have 3 to 4 unit production buildings, and each of those has 2 to 3 units being trained from them, and each of those units has 1 to 2 corresponding researchers that goes in a vertical line from the unit. So it's very easy to find where your units are and what their associated researchers are. And then there were a handful of more specific unit changes that came from that. Like you've highlighted the war wagon being removed from Stormwind there. That was kind of a roundabout one, in that when I was taking the solo path away from Dalaran, part of what that meant was taking away most of their Colteran flavor, and I basically just extricated the entire Colterian flavor from Dalaran and moved that straight over to Stormwind.
Yep.
Uh,
Cannons
It
included.
made more sense to me, so that Dalaran could be more of a clear, it is a magic faction, and that's really all it needs in terms of flavor.
Yeah.
One thing I noticed, maybe I missed something, but it seemed like more factions have siege engines than they originally did, and maybe I was just like, maybe it was like something I missed. Like I know Stormwind
Yeah.
and Dalaran have siege.
Yeah, yeah. That is intentional as well. What that is kind of part of what solo pods were doing was they were making it so that when your ally left the game, you got given the kind of units that you need to be able to operate as a solo or duo faction when you otherwise couldn't. North Alliance didn't need all three of their factions to have siege. It was fine if just Quel'Thalas did, because the assumption was that you would always have Quel'Thalas in the game. We're not making that assumption now, and we don't have solo paths to rely on. So most factions, we're trying to make them be able to operate a little bit better on their own if they have to,
Yeah.
and that means giving them siege.
That's the biggest change. I always joke in macro maps. First thing you do is, well, it's not even a joke. The first thing you do is you build all your siege engines, and that's how you win. Without building those first, you're never gonna win. I mean,
Yeah. And to come back quickly to the when we removed or rather we reduced every unit producing building to 3 units. That also led to the idea at the very top of the changelog to have all factions hotkey and icons restructured so they're all exactly the same. So your first column is your civilian buildings, I call them. So your town hall, your house, blacksmith, shipyard. The second column is all unit producing, and the third one is towers and like some extras. And that's also, I think, something that was very confusing. That there was faction like Scourge that their boneyard was next to their house because they didn't have towers, so things move around, and it just didn't make sense that we have so many different factions, so we don't want players looking at like searching in their own menus to find their units. Now you know that your A hotkey is always going to be your barracks. Your barracks always has a melee unit or range unit. So we really made that way really all the same. All the factions have the same structure, and that makes it way easier to find your way around without having to think about it.
doesn't affect me. I have grid hotkeys. Grid hotkey Masteries.
Well, that makes you better then, because your muscle
Already had the
memory.
change. Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that definitely makes the game a little easier in the
Yeah.
best way, because it's like like if you have custom hotkeys or whatever, it favors the experienced players because they can build their whatever faster, barracks, etc.
Yeah, we try to do anything we can to make this easier, because really there's no real risk that it's going to become easy. It's a macro map.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
It's
Thank God you
the
nerfed those goblin things. Those, yeah, I absolutely hate those
the
things. They just kill me.
the camps.
Yeah, they're so strong.
Yeah, that was a big complaint. We also, one thing is that we don't want creeps to be too difficult. It feels bad to try and creep a creep camp and then you lose and you have to retreat. That's just bad experience all around. You never want that to happen, except if it's a boss. If you're attacking Ragnaros, then yeah, maybe you'll get your ass kicked. But if you're just selecting your starting army and moving up with Grom and then you encounter a bunch of angry goblins, that doesn't feel great.
All right, so some factions got changed a lot, and then Kalimdor got changed a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to talk about the other factions, Zach, or do you want to go into Kalimdor right away?
I guess I just offhandedly mentioned that probably the faction that got hit the most with the sort of removals and changes into quests is Ironforge.
Yeah.
Yeah, they lost pretty much their entire Explorer's Hall mechanic.
Dave's favorite faction.
Yeah, absolutely.
We nuked them to the ground.
Yeah, I just thought that was a slightly strange gameplay layer on top of Ironforge, and in practice, I think players were almost always getting between 1 and 2 expedition sites and relying on those exclusively, so the mechanic wasn't quite ever doing what it was meant to. And I thought quests and researches would basically suffice. In practice, they're probably stripped down too heavily. So in the next
Yeah.
patch, we're looking at giving them quite a bit of power back, and after that, more flavor. As far as other factions go, I think that's about it.
I think we can mention Scourge that like change a lot where the units are trained, which is like the most departure we had from a melee faction. Like in Azeroth Wars, there are a bunch of factions that are very close to their melee counterparts, Scourge being one of them. But we made some decision to reduce the number of buildings and building producing units, which made some decision like the gargoyle and the obsidian destroyer in the boneyard, which you wouldn't really think about it, but they're all flying units. So now the boneyard is really like the flying producing building.
Yeah, I'm always surprised we haven't had any complaints about changing things like that, but I guess people get used to it quickly.
Yeah, some of the things that I noticed, I guess, I mean, you can browse through the quest log or try it yourself, but yeah, those siege units, that's dope.
Yeah.
I think Earth Golems going to 12 seems kind of significant. I remember just being like, oh, sick, I can make more of these.
Yeah, that was possibly excessive, but we'll look at that.
Yeah. I didn't play every faction, but
Certainly, Dalaran in
Stormwind.
general, their late game ended up being completely absurd, which I guess in retrospect should be unsurprising.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess
Well,
it's not really. I guess it's maybe I'm missing something. It seemed like Stormwind got a new building, and they can just train those like uh flying things. What are they called? Carrier
oh
flagships. Is that what these are?
uh so the carrier flagship I think is a boat, but
Yeah, that's about.
so, Stormwind always had the workshop that could train the zeppelins, but it's always been kind of in the background. Not many people use them, so I
Ah,
guess with this update, we kind of put more emphasis on unit producing building being all in the same spot. So it seems like people notice stuff that faction didn't have just because everything is more organized now.
yeah, I didn't play Iron. Kalimdor seemed to have most of the changes.
Yeah,
Also,
I'll let Seabass
Ron.
talk about Kalimdor. Oh yeah, Lordaeron. I mean, Lordaeron just got a ton of stuff from their solo paths because Lordaeron's solo paths and Masteries did a ton of stuff. Like the Scarlet Crusade stuff, the Paladin training stuff. Those are both from the solo path. Rapid Fire and Veteran Footmen are both from the Masteries. And yeah, those are the major additions for them. Oh, and
I
Thunder Eagles. Oh wait, no, Thunder Eagles were already there. And there was the Pegasus Knight that was also from the solo path.
Yeah, I think before getting to Kalimdor, you can talk about Felhord, like the tears removal and stuff, and Quel'Thalas, all the new building rearrangement we did.
Oh yeah. Got the last first, I guess. Oh no, yeah, you're already on Felhord, all good. Um yeah, those were kind of a more last minute one in the sense that I just wanted to get rid of the tiers and just make the rewards for those a little bit more straightforward. Then that's all it is really. It's like rather than killing Ironforge and Stormwind and then picking your tiers based on that, you kind of just get both rewards, one per capital, with a slightly reduced down version of those. And of course, I removed the. Oh no, there's a different patch. Don't worry. Just thinking about that crazy McTheridan quest.
Yeah. Also, this version shows the first Grandmaster training for a caster in the Felork Warlock.
Oh, was that like the third?
It's basically, yeah, it's the third level, and we are adding one actually in the next update, and I think Yak planned to add some to Dalaran too.
Is that improved self bloodlust or? Wait,
That's a bit lower. Felhorg training, I'll highlight it.
oh, this one.
Yeah.
Ah,
So basically, some casters will start giving them a fourth level, like a fourth spell. Um, the idea was first born for Dalaran, because Dalaran we removed a caster to streamline things, but it feels thematic that they would have four spells because it's the faction of magic and stuff. But here Felhor got it, so basically it was why I think it was because it was a mastery that you gave them back, and
Yeah, it was.
yeah, and Iron Forge, we are gonna do it in the next version for the engineers. So basically, we're giving like some factions are well known for like a lot of pro efficiency with a certain skill. We're giving them a fort research to really highlight that these casters are better than others.
I haven't played Quel'Thalas yet. What happened there?
Yeah, Yak.
Yeah. So those were the first buildings that I changed. So they ended up being fairly significant, making like the consortium building, which is sort of an elite caster production building. What else was actually there? Oh, the main thing I really wanted was just to get back Spellbreakers. Yeah, they also got back Blood Mages via that was from the solo path again, from the quest that they can complete. Granite Golems got removed, but we kind of wanted to keep those thematically, so we put them as like a Sunwell summon spell. Arcane Wagons again from the Masteries, so they ended up with two entirely new units just to be able to spread out their functionality a bit more and just make them a little bit cooler. And the slow mana cost and the heal mana cost thing was just. I'm just so convinced that those casters should be good because they're iconic casters, and it makes sense that Coldfast would have good casters. But those particular spells didn't see a lot of use because of their sheer mana costs.
Yeah, slow especially I think was really egregious. That basically good players turned it off because they wanted mana for their sorceress. So it always feels bad when you need to turn off a spell that kind of shows you that it missed the point. So yeah.
Legion has the smallest number, but this is so significant over here. The Astral one. I know immediately. I was like, finally, bro! I can just teleport my Dreadlord right to Lordaeron.
Yeah, I
If
mean
I
that was
wanted
from the
to.
solo path.
Yeah.
But they have the smallest one because they kind of need the most changes, and I wasn't quite prepared to do all of them in this patch, which is already doing so much other stuff. Changes to
Yeah.
come.
So we have like a short list of factions that are in need of help. Right now it's like I was just talking in the Discord, Warsong, Legion, and Quel'Thalas, all for different reasons. Quel'Thalas because they're devoided of quests right now. It's really kind of sad. They don't have almost any interesting objectives. Warsong because they fall off really bad in the late game. So in the early game they're fine, but then when you get to the late game they feel really bad to play, and that's a problem. And Legion, because the summoning mechanic is so important to Azeroth Wars. When you summon, you gain a whole bunch of demons that are so strong, but that makes it so there's a big divide between before summoning and after. And right now, it feels like it's not quite there yet, so we need to work on that.
Awesome. And then now the biggest change. What I'll do after, like, I guess we just talk about this, and then I'll open up and like change this up so that I can show off the terrain a little bit.
Oh yeah,
Um,
that took a while.
because it's cool. There's a lot of changes. I played Warsong and Frostwolf. I didn't get to play the other two yet, so I don't know what changed for.
All right, so I guess I'll go over and I'll throw it to Yak when he did some of the changes and stuff. But okay, so to go quickly from the start, Kalimdor was always a problem continent. Um, and I had a long discussion with the players in the Discord to figure out exactly why the duel never really worked. Um, it's been the one that's changed the most over the years. If people remember, back then Horde started in Eastern Kingdom next to Dalaran. We had Naga. It's always been changing. Um, and to make a long story short, basically we determined that the main problem is that the distance of engagements are too large. The territory is too big and there's not enough things in it. If you look at North Alliance, things are really compact, but it makes for a very dynamic duel because you got lots of bases to fall off on, lots of territory. But Kalimdor, usually what happens is you creep around and then you smash your armies together, someone wins and the other person loses, and that's it. There's usually no comeback, there's no flow. It's really just one mashup, one fight, and then it's over. And that's a big problem in a map that's supposed to be larger than life and like you need to have bases. So that was the starting point of the revamp. So in the map, you're gonna see in the terrain once it's open. Basically, my idea was to make a very close engagement line from the beginning. Really like Dalaran and Alterac. It was my best like comparison, or Blackrock and Stormwind. They're really close together, so there's fight. That was the point of the Kalimdor one. So uh to do that, I put Warsong in the north because I wanted Warsong Lumber Camp versus Druids, which is a very important campaign mission to be like the first mashup point. Which mean that Frostwolf was sent south. So from there, Yak helped me. Like Yak made the quest, the Long March. If you look from Frostwolf, which is basically you start from the bottom with Cairn and you go towards Thunder Bluff, which is once again the campaign, but that grounds you in the bottom also. And since I removed Orgrimmar, which was a hard choice, but it basically removes the only northern base for Frostwolf, and I changed some terrain, so now Frostwolf is pushed down the map and Warsong is pushed up. So that was the basis of the changes. So, Yak, if you want to talk about the Warsong building change and stuff, like the organization and
Oh yeah. I think Seabass actually disagreed with this decision, as I recall. I was just annoyed with the layout on the Warsong stuff, and I tried, like most other factions, tried to figure out some kind of thematic layout where it would have 3 units, 3 units, 2 units, or whatever in each structure. I don't like structures with 4 units, which I can't explain. But I ended up just dividing it into orcs, trolls, and
Why don't you
ogres,
like structures of the
and
four
that's
units?
basically it. Because because the goal here with the sheer number of researchers that we want to include, so people can like customize their armies, is that each research generally upgrades one specific unit. That research is in the same column as that specific unit, and if you put a research in the bottom right corner of the structure, then that gets overridden by the cancel button, and that really annoys me.
Yeah.
And you also can't have it in the middle right button because that's where the rally point is. So you can't have a unit in the top right.
I see.
yeah. So the only reason I disagreed with it is that if you come back to the layouts, I wanted the S hotkey to be all the casters. But now with the racial separation, if you mean like ogres in one building, trolls in another, the casters are separated. So it's technically the only faction that doesn't have all their casters in the same building, but it makes from a lore point of view, it's way more visually interesting that a spire building is a very ogre building, and so every building is part of the tribal identity, which makes it visually make more sense. Yeah, so for the elves, once again, Yak, you could talk about the druids and sentinel because you moved quite a lot of stuff there, especially druids.
Yeah, I barely even remember it. But the main thing for me with the druids was I just really wanted to shapeshift. It was really bothering me. Like I kind of get the I kind of get the convenience of being able to train the bear form version of them directly, but in practice in Azeroth Wars, we were able to train the bear form version, but then couldn't convert it into the caster version without getting I think it was a solo path. And you could train the Druid of the Talon, but couldn't shapeshift it into the Crow form without getting a mastery. And all of that just really annoyed me. So I really wanted to just simplify it down and just say you get these casters that you have in melee and you can shapeshift them like you can in melee.
Yeah, even
Um,
sentinels, you did a lot of moving out. You give them cameras, stuff like that.
oh yeah, I just think green dragons are cool, so I put them on druids for a bit of pizzazz, and then that meant moving the chimera to sentinels, which is thematically slightly more appropriate anyway. I think chimeras have a stronger association with sentinels, particularly as you see them in World of Warcraft.
Yeah. So another thing from there for druids is with the removal of the bears, trainable by bears, we basically didn't have a good melee unit, and the Furbolg was always awful. So I basically wanted to lean in a bit more into the Treant team, because if you remember the campaign, a lot of the time you get Treant appearing from the forest and attacking the orcs. So that's like the image I wanted to go for. So I basically made the normal melee unit for druids to become a Treant. And now they're more tanky, they're more durable than DPS, which is actually something that's very thematic for druids. They're more resilient that they're offensive, right? So the Furbolg being a very offensive and squishy unit kind of went against the whole faction that is like resilient. So that was one big change that I did. So yeah, so the final big change in Kalimdor is that the Sentinels now start mainly in the bottom. Maeve, which started north, now starts on the bottom in Cenarion Hold, and Cenarion Hold is now a full Sentinel base. So Druids have no presence at the bottom of Kalimdor. It's all Sentinels. That makes it one that Druids are way easier to play because all your units are together, and two that Sentinels have a presence in the south. Before, what usually happened is that Sentinels ran north because you couldn't contest Warsong with only a little base, Feathermoon Stronghold. But now that they have two bases that are more significant, they can. There's really a north and south separation that is fair and that you can fight over with more. Yeah, with more bases. Really, that was important in Kalimdor.
I think that's good for. I noticed playing, I guess, either side. If you don't know your teammate and you don't have good coordination, and your enemy pair in Kalimdor has good coordination, because you start split, like just lose. Because
Yeah.
like one person might just sit on the other side and be like, "Dude, you're killing me." So that's cool. I like that.
To finish Kalimdor, Yak, do you want to talk about the Kodos, the building?
Oh, dude, I do not like the Kodos. Sorry.
You don't like the Kodos?
No,
Tell me about
because
that.
when I fucking the first game I played, I thought they did damage, and I was just suiciding them. Creeps. I was like, "Are you kidding me? These buildings." Maybe they're
Wow,
good
okay.
though. I just played them once. So.
They do have like the proper Kodo Beast version, but those have a rider on the back. um, yeah, the Kodos are just because Siva said he didn't want to give. I think it was like he didn't want to give Frostwolf like a big starting base, but still didn't want to make it take ages for them to build a starting base. So I said, why don't I put some buildings on some Kodo backs, and you can use those to build.
Yeah,
Basically, any Frostwolf structure can be packed into a pack Kodo, and you can put it in boats or move it around and put the structure somewhere else.
You can even teleport with them, so you could pack your whole base and teleport, and it's easier to build.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really born from the desire to once again kind of emulate the campaign. So you start with Karen and a big caravan, and that caravan becomes a base as you make your way up. It's kind of like to go with the more the nomad theme of the torrents. So yeah, that's a small cool little thing.
I'm excited to see that abused. I'm gonna like somebody's just gonna do the Kodo meme strat. Like I don't know.
Yeah, someone's gonna
Anders.
sneak a Kodo somewhere and teleport an army.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's that about makes it for Kalimdor. So the race's terrain changes, but
All right.
that's harder to visualize.
Well, I can bring that up right now. You
While you
guys
do,
want? You,
yep, go ahead.
I was just gonna say if you want to talk about like implications.
Oh well, we can.
Insights.
Yeah, we can talk a bit about the future, but first, really quickly, Lordaeron now has a really unique thing that I really like that Yak did. So, can you talk about the Paladin Adept and Master training?
Ah, yeah. Paladins had the resurrection research, and then they also the solar paths had the ability to get reincarnation. And just because I could, and because they're kind of caster-like elites, I just gave them a caster research with Adept Master training straight on that to be able to get reincarnation and resurrection. Is that what we were talking about?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because it's the first elite that has an adept and master training, which is kind of very unique.
Poggers.
If you want Blade Master, I can share my screen with the editor open, so as I talk I can show the stuff. So it would just be instead of my camera, you would have like the map.
Okay, sure. I mean, we can do this, but
Like, I'm not sure if you can see it easily.
yeah, sure. Share your screen. It's
Yeah,
better in the
I just. So here, so that's the screen. I don't know if it's gonna replace though. Oh, there. So yeah. We could talk a bit about the 1.14 update and the future, what we plan on doing in the short term. Yeah, wanna take that one?
Uh, 1.14. I mean, it's mostly just balance stuff, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, there's a big Ironforge revamp.
Yeah, well, that was mostly you. You can talk about that.
I guess, yeah. All right. So, but also like your future plans for you had Gilneas, the Plague, the Legion one. So you can talk about those.
Oh yeah. Now.
Well, I guess we're just open on Kalimdor, so I'll go over quickly and we
Go
can
ahead.
do the finishing touch. So, yeah. So here we have the Warsome Lumber Camp. So basically, Orgrimmar doesn't exist, and everything is kind of Warsong, so your forces are more centralized, and it's a big defensive position. So I really wanted to emphasize like the defense part of the campaign that you need to hold, basically. So right here you got like your little buffer base that's gonna get decimated, and really close here you got all the Druid forces. And the idea is that Druids have a lot of units, but you got a lot of towers. So you can't really fight into them yet. You need to farm, bring Grom, bring the ogres that are down here. So you need to kind of wait up. And druids are really strong, so they can kind of take the more offensive position, control the terrain, decide where they go, and yeah. So a big thing from that is also that I removed the whole druid base here. So now it's all creeps. So basically you take your small base here and you start creeping the tree, and everything else is creeps. So you have two big bases and the rest is creeps. So it's way more straightforward what you have to do, and you can focus on fighting instead of trying to micromanage one base in the north, one base here in the south, and that makes it way easier. So that's the biggest change. This whole area here. So there's a forest here that you can go through. Both Warsong and Druids can decide to cut it. Yeah, and the base, the Warsong Lumber Camp with the multiple paths here. So that was very important to make this part of the map a battleground. So it's way more open. You got more paths north and south. So that was really important. The other big change is the Echo Isles here. Before you could traverse here, but now it goes south. So, and it's a whole Frostwolf base. So now Frostwolf has access to a lot more creeps like these ones and these ones. It's 2 more control points that before they didn't have, and it makes them go south. So that's one more thing. And Thunderbluff here that they don't start with it, but it's more open, so you can go through here and through here. So it's a more interesting base. And finally, we have the Cairn start here. And this beach is very important because when you kill the witch, before there was a couple of boats that spawned here, and you need to bring back your heroes, go into boats, and then sail. But now, as soon as you finish the quest, Cairn is teleported here, which is easier on the player, and also it brings all your forces together, which once again makes a lot more sense. And now you can creep on the bottom, go to Thunderbluff, and it opens up your options way more. So yeah, that's the biggest changes. Snaron Hold is now a Sentinel base. So those really are the biggest changes, but it makes a whole lot of difference. There's a small base here. Once again, it helps with the Sentinel creeping Desolus. Yeah. So that covers the big Kalimdor terrain revamp. All right.
Nope.
So I think we can just finish with questions from the chat if anyone got questions, and also the future. I'll let Yakari on that one.
Well, it's been several years coming, but I need to redo Gilneas completely in an actual piece of code rather than leaving it in GUI because it hasn't worked properly for a very long time. Illidan needs to come back somehow. I don't know how, but he does.
New faction, Naga?
Well, no. I don't think so.
We've been debating that one forever.
Yeah, I don't remember the other two.
There's the Legion remake and the Plague remake.
Yeah. Plague is another one that has always been done in GUI, and therefore I've never touched it because I don't like GUI. Maybe I can do some cool stuff with some code. I don't know. And yeah, Legion revamp.
Yeah. Want to talk about it a bit? The Legion idea?
I don't think so. I think
All
we
right.
had a million ideas there, and I'm not sure we landed. So.
All right, let's keep it wrapped.
It's a secret.
It's a secret for now. Well, you can probably scroll up our map discussion and find the.
Yeah, we don't really have any secrets on our dev team, do we?
Yeah.
Is Richardic dead?
Oh.
We can only assume so.
Oh, he's in Zoom's chat,
that's for sure.
so he's not completely dead.
Yeah.
Well, we're trying to
to
contact him, so if anyone hears from him, let him know that Sivas and Yak would really like a message sometime soon.
Yeah. Let us know if you can get in contact with him. But yeah, so that's what 1.13 in a nutshell. Yeah, so for a closing word, we really wanted to make the map like to feel very polished and streamlined. So we wanted it to we got it to a point where we were happy to say like every faction is consistent, every faction is well done. There's no broken icons, no broken hotkeys. We really wanted it to be like the update where everything is like taking to the next level. And with these foundations, and Yak touched about it earlier with the research, it will enable us to make so much more things, and it gives us more freedom to work on systems because there's no more masteries or path to worry about. Now everything is quest and research, and it's so much easier to design stuff for that.
Awesome. Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to playing every faction. It seems like some of the changes are small, but I think some of the small changes are actually gigantic. So I've already noticed that it's played a bit differently.
Yeah, so that's about it. Oh yeah, the music for the cinematic. That's just a pet peeve of mine. I just wanted every cinematic to feel more like the campaign. So I put the appropriate music from the scene the dialogue is taken from. And for Stormwind, I took some liberty and I went to I did some actually music editing to have it a nice little mix.
So no, it doesn't seem like there are any questions, but let's see if we can go off of War 340 question. Who do you think will win in the movie next month, King Kong or Godzilla?
Uh,
I have no idea what that means.
You don't know the movie? Ah,
I do.
you're not from the Western world.
Well, if I remember well, in the original, Godzilla won. So, but I'm gonna root for my boy King Kong because he needs a win. He needs a win on the board.
He needs a. I'm trying to remember which came first, Godzilla or King. I think one of them was in response.
I can answer easily. Godzilla was first. It was one of the first big Hollywood movies with music that was. Yeah, there's a big thing about the history of King Kong in cinematic making, and Godzilla actually was a response to World War II and the devastation of nuclear weapon
Yeah.
because it came in the 50s, so it's 30 years later actually.
My
I
money's
think.
on Godzilla.
Yeah. All right. So let's see who's right.
He came first. Be disrespect.
All right.
All right. Well, so thank you for talking about the patch. Yeah, Sebas. Feel free to join the Discord. I'll link it in the comments and then in the chat. And if you're watching from Twitch, thank you and all that. I will post this on tomorrow. Final words.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, that's it from me. Thanks, Blade.
All right, wonderful. Wear a mask.
See ya.
We'll catch you guys later. Hopefully, you can enjoy the map. And if there's any person who watches this that didn't play Azeroth Wars in a long time, give it a go. It's changed a lot, but you might find it more close to what you remember than what it was like 1 year or two ago.
The eternal struggle of escaping a map's previous identity. Something I know so well. All right.
Yep. All right. Catch you later. Thank you.